If you click it on this video, you probably already know at least something about Socrates. Yes, he was an ancient Greek philosopher, and, followed by Plato, he was the father of philosophy in Occident, being not only a relevant social figure of his time, but also a huge figure for our times on the consolidation of our modern culture. But what you might not know about Socrates is how he died. At age of 70, he faces a trial, accused of exploring new gods and corrupting the minds of the young. Socrates was found guilty and sentenced to death. This book covers everything we are about to talk about in this video: the trial, the accusations, and his defense. This book was written by Plato. Plato was not present at the moment that his friend and master, Socrates, died, but he was present in the trial, among the crowd, taking notes of everything to then provide a proper representation. That's what this book is about. Plato is the main source we can access Socrates. We basically only know Socrates through the eyes of Plato, because, as you might or not know, Socrates never wrote a book. He never wrote a single word his entire life, because actually, he was even totally against books. He hated them and wanted people to stop from reading them. He said that people were going to lose their memory, rely on the writing and storage capacity of books, and stop using their own reasoning powers. Does that sound familiar to you? Yeah, that's a smartphone. In ancient Greece, a trial was a public event. 501 persons attended Socrates' trial. The Athenians' court followed the model of people's court. These trials often involved juries of citizens, and the size of the jury varied depending on whether it was a private or public case. Actually, there was two kinds of trials: dike for private suits or graphe for public prosecutions. Elaboration: dike or dike to a private lawsuit, where individuals will sue each other over matters like debt, property, disputes, or damages. Graphe referred to public prosecution, where the state will prosecute individuals for crimes against the state, such as impiety or treason. Impiety is the word we were looking for. Socrates' trial was an impiety trial. It was a trial based on religious allegations that often concealed other, primarily political, motives, common against intellectuals and public figures in Athens. However, the cause of Socrates' trial made it absolutely exceptional. There is no known other case of this kind that has ever resulted in a death sentence and execution of the accused. These trials were often carried out with the intention of securing the exile of the accused, not his death. The last thing I want to mention: in the court of Athens, the accused could count on people to help him with his defense, but Socrates decided to defend himself alone. But what was he accused of? There were two types of accusations: formal and informal, or at least there were two parts of Socrates' defense. First, he defends himself against these informal accusations, which were essentially rumors surrounding Socrates. The informal charges are three: 1. Investigate underground gods and those in heaven. 2. To turn the strongest argument into the weakest. 3. to teach others what is indicated in points 1 and 2. The first point links Socrates to the early natural philosophers and makes him a suspect of atheism. Points 2 and 3, on the other hand, link him to the sophists and masters of oratory, whom Socrates hated and found himself in dispute with, as well as with poets, artisans, sophists, politicians, and etc. Let's get into the real charges, the ones that brought Socrates into the trial, the formal ones. First, corrupting the minds of young people, and second, disbelieving in the gods of the city. And also, who accuses Socrates? The formal accuser is Miletus. Miletus. But the real accusation was provided by Anytus. Anytus. By Anytus. Miletus' master. Oh, how convenient. He was a relevant political figure in Athens. He represented the artisans and the politicians. Would you like to hear a little gossip? Well, Anytus was once accused of an impeached trial himself for betraying Athens, but he managed to escape this by resorting to the magical expedient of bribing the jury. Aristotle later revisited this event, defining it as the beginning of the corruption of Athenian justice. Socrates' defense now takes the form of an interrogation of Miletus. This is his characteristic style of Socratic dialogues, where he exposes the inconsistencies in the accused's position. This style is what we commonly refer to as the Socratic method. There is an excellent moment in Socrates' defense, where he accuses Miletus of suddenly becoming preoccupied with matters that previously did not seem to matter to him. Don't you find this behavior extremely common these days? I can imagine a fight or an argument where someone comes out and says something like, "Oh, this could be harmful to children." And it's like, "Oh, now suddenly we all worry about children." Regarding the first charge, Socrates develops two counter arguments. So, Miletus asserts that Socrates is the only one who corrupts the child, and, in contrast, considers everyone else to be the benefactors. This is implausible, especially in this type of setting where techniques are taught. It is believed that only the person who knows the technique is capable of doing good when teaching it. Socrates proposes the example of a horse. Only its caretaker could do good when caring for it, while other people will do harm. In the case of young people, proposed by Miletus, the exact opposite will apply. A single individual will be capable of harming them, while everyone else will be their benefactors. The second argument that Socrates presents is a dilemma, in which both paths question the relevance of Miletus' accusation. The dilemma is this: Socrates corrupts the youth either A. voluntary or B. involuntary. If the case is A, Socrates will be harming himself since he will be making the young people who follow him and with whom he spends most of his time evil. The assumption that a man of his age will not notice this danger is implausible. However, if the case is B and Socrates corrupts the young people unintentionally, then his action will no longer constitute a necessarily imputable crime and will not require punishment, but rather we will be faced with an error, for whose elimination it will only be necessary to instruct Socrates, not to kill him. To defend himself against the second accusation, disbelieving in the gods of the city, Socrates presents his initiation into philosophy. Socrates' beginnings in philosophy reminds me a bit of the beginning of Snow White. Do you remember The beginning, Snow White. The queen asks the mirror, "Oh, mirror, who is the prettiest girl in the world?" And the mirror says, "Snow White." And the queen, angry and confused, asks, "Why? How could this be possible?" And it's because the real beauty is inside. It's inside of you. Well, something similar happens with Socrates. Geronte, a friend of Socrates, went to the Oracle of Delphos. It's a place on Delphos. It's a temple dedicated to the god Apollo, a place where people go to ask about his future. In there is an aphorism that says, "Know yourself." Geronte asked the oracle who was the smartest man in the world, and the oracle replied, "Socrates." Because the real wisdom is inside, it's inside of you. In this way, Socrates justifies his philosophical activity based on certain ethical and religious convictions. This also justifies his reason for not abandoning it. He explains that this activity of inquiring, for which he is accused, is a mission granted by the god Apollo himself. So, Socrates' mission becomes a call to live virtuously, prioritizing the health of the soul over the material things. This is basically the function of philosophy today. The existence of a book is of no use in your world. Reading it gives it greater relevance, interpreting it gives greater relevance, and beginning to implement it in your life is what truly makes it relevant in the world. This is the function of philosophy, to allow you to live your life more consciously. Back to Socrates. Among his early investigation and approaches to philosophy, he quickly realized the following. Those who were known for their wisdom often lacked real knowledge, while others, seemingly less brilliant, displayed greater common sense. Thinking about the sophists, poets, artisans, and politicians, this is why he concludes that his wisdom lies in the awareness of his own ignorance. This is where his famous phrase, "I only know that I know nothing," comes from, because he managed to understand the message of the Oracle of Delphos, which positions him as the wisest man in Athens. It's precisely his awareness of his own ignorance that makes him wiser than others. I would like to mention something very important, and it's the ethical principles of Socrates that we can deduce from this episode. The first is at the moment of making a moral decision and deciding to take action. When choosing what to do in risky circumstances that involve a moral conviction, the agent must consider exclusively whether what they are about to do is just or not, without considering possible negative consequences that he himself could suffer as a result of his action. When carrying out a mission or an order, one must not abandon one's post. It doesn't matter if it was chosen by oneself or assigned by someone else. Referring, of course, to what we just mentioned about the mission assigned by the god Apollo to Socrates. The third principle: a good man cannot truly suffer harm from a bad man. I will say something like, a good person cannot truly suffer pain from a bad person. I think this principle is extremely poetic, mainly because of the situation Socrates finds himself in, being judged by bad people, not knowing what they consider right, for doing what he considers right. It's like when you know you have done something truly good. No one can harm you because you are happy or because you are proud of yourself. This principle establishes the superiority of soul's internal goods over external well-being and possessions, and also introduces the idea that committing an injustice is even worse than suffering one. Now, I think this is one of the most badass quotes or ideas from Socrates. He said, I recommend that you all let me live, because you won't easily find another one like me. He was so right. At this point in the trial, he's already found guilty, but the jury offers him to live if he stops philosophizing, and Socrates said no. Let's get back to the painting. The man in the bed is Socrates, pointing to the sky. He's surrounded by his students. They are suffering by the sentence of his master, that one of his students is providing him a cup. This is the cup of death. This cup contains the poison that's going to kill Socrates. He's accepting his death. On top of the bed, this person is no other than Plato. He's writing the book that we just read, but most important, he's not looking at him. Plato was not present at the moment of Socrates' death. He just wrote his memories. In the back, we can see people who are sleeping and saying goodbye, waving their hands. They are not looking to Socrates, they are looking at you, the one who is looking at the painting. Because you are the one who is going to stay here. In conclusion, the trial remains today an inexhaustible source of reflection on philosophy, ethics, and the role of individual in society. This is the core message I am to transmit with this video. We must ask ourselves as a society, how do we treat the individuals who is different, who behaves different? Do we punish them? Yes, we punish them. At the moment of sentencing, where the majority of those present voted to find Socrates guilty and sentence him to death, Socrates said the following: well, if you believe that by killing people you will prevent yourself from being reproached for not living rightly, you are not considering things well. Science, this way of evading things is not at all effective. On the contrary, the most honorable and easiest way does not consist of repressing others, but in preparing oneself to be the best possible. With this prophecy, I bid farewell to those who voted for my condemnation. Although his life came to a tragic end, his legacy lives on as a search of truth, a search of truth. The simple fact that over 2000 years later, a person in his room is talking about what Socrates did that day and then decides to share it with others through something called the internet is already beyond incredible. This episode invites everyone, including you, dear viewer, to question our own convictions and to evaluate our consistent actions in life. As he bid farewell, these were his last words. I ask only one thing of you. When my sons grow up, inflict upon them the same harm that I have inflicted upon you. If it seems to you that they care more about wealth than for being virtuous. And here comes one of Socrates' famous quotes: virtue does not come from wealth, but wealth comes from virtue. If you act this way, my sons will have received just treatment for you. But now it is time to go. For me to die, and for you to live. Which of us is going to the better path? No one knows. No one knows for sure. Only God. Thank you so much for watching. This was my first video ever. I know it's probably not good because, well, it's my first video ever. So thank you for making it until the end. It will mean the world for me if you share this video with someone you think it will like it. That's all for today's video. See you in a few weeks with a new one.